what advice might you have to them to do, thinking about this, the slide before, to support a conversation at least to start with?
So like I would say again, don't freak out and don't yell and don't try to play it off as something that isn't a huge deal, but also don't blow it out of the water in what you're trying. If that, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what. But also there are many different ways to overreact to something. Obviously it's a huge deal, but then there's ways to handle it and ways not to handle it. Like going against their wishes and trying to put them in an institution is not a good idea. Trying to talk to them about it, and of course you have to put some boundaries because that is never okay, but you have to find the source of why they're doing it. It's not always, oh, because I'm suicidal. That isn't always the reason. Some people who self-harm do it for different reasons than other people, and self-harming doesn't always mean cutting or doing other things that people usually talk about. It could mean any sort of things. Like in the video it says about starving, that is a way of self-harming without having like an eating disorder, as we would call it.
Substance abuse reference as well, self-destructive behaviors.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, and also like self-harming could also be diving into thinking. So it's not always outward, and you can't always see the scars. So you won't always notice it. And so I would just say open up a conversation about mental illness, even if you don't think that they have something or a huge problem with it. That's always a good idea. But yeah, so if you know your kid is self-harming in any sort of way, I would try to talk to them, try to find a solution that you can both agree on, but also set boundaries where it's not making them uncomfortable. Because like I said, going against their wishes and doing something that they don't want to do is not going to help anything. Any other questions?
Therapists, counselors, enough said. No, but seriously, enough said. That's
Right.
just all. That's just the whole basis of this. So I'm a huge advocate for therapy, and I kind of wanted to tell you, like, just a little personal story. It's not super deep or anything, but I have a pretty, average life, middle class, white female. My parents are both very loving towards me. I'm an only child. I get good grades. It's just, it's pretty average. I've never had any traumatic events happen in my life except for my parents getting divorced, which I saw coming 3 years before it happened because they just didn't act like other couples. Didn't cry once about it because it wasn't a big deal to me. I was happy for them. So I don't have any mental disorders diagnosed or anything, but I still always had this huge weight on my shoulders all the time growing up, and I was constantly surrounded by other people who had mental disorders or things, and I felt their pain myself, just watching them grow up with these disorders, and I remember when my parents got divorced, I was fine with it, I was happy for them, but there's something about your parents splitting up and you having to create this whole new life for yourself where you have one parent in one house and another parent in another house where it's weird. You can't run to one parent when you have a problem with another parent, If your dad's bullying you or something, you can't be like, well, Mom, guess what he did today, Anyway, so I had my problems, and I didn't know who to go to. I didn't want to go to my parents because they were dealing with their own issues and everything, learning how to deal with financial crisis when you're, separating from the second part of your income, and then just the sadness of getting a divorce, even though they both wanted it. And I realized I needed therapy. I was like, I need someone. So this is one of my points. Therapy is great for someone who feels like they're a burden, especially, if you feel like by talking about your issues or you think that you're being overdramatic, especially if there's stigma. That's what sucks about this whole stigma against therapy, because, you know, one of the biggest reasons why someone should go to therapy is because there's so much stigma surrounding mental illness and stuff. So you feel the need to go to therapy. So therapy is just amazing, especially if you feel like you need someone to talk to that's outside of your family. You need someone who is completely unbiased. You need someone who isn't going to see you on a regular day-to-day basis, 24/7. And, you know, so if you have a fear of being judged, and also everyone goes through hardships. I honestly believe everyone should go to therapy. I think it's amazing, you know, because it's really hard for at least, I know teenagers, it's really hard for them to be like completely 100% selfless. It's hard to go to your friends sometimes and be like, guess what, I'm having issues. And they're just like, yeah, well, I'm having issues too. I can one up that. So, you know, it's good to have someone there who, you know, they're an adult, but they're also outside the realm of adults just because they're not part of your life necessarily. So, telling a little story, I decided to go to therapy, and the first therapist I went to, she was a little, I know this is not a word we should use, but this is a little cuckoo. I ended up giving her therapy, which was funny because that's one of the reasons I needed to go to therapy. I was like, I am constantly like trying to help people with their issues, but like no one seems to like care about mine. Anyways, a whole different topic. But so I went to this therapist, and she had one of those little like yip dogs. It's really crazy, giving me anxiety. But yeah, Hannegan knows she has.
I'm full of the yip dogs.
I went in there and I was like, okay, so I'm gonna talk about my issues. I don't know how therapy works, and she was like, yeah, let's just go ahead and talk. Just tell me about your day. We'll just start from there. So I told her about how I had to make like a bunch of bread for food lit class. That happened, and she was like, yeah, I used to make bread. I would pretend that it was my husband while I was beating it because he was just horrible to me. And she started going on a rant about her horribly abusive husband. And from then on, I was just like, oh yeah, that's got to be rough for you. You know, you can't blame yourself.
more.
And after the first time, I went up to my mom, and my mom is just amazingly supportive when it comes to, you know, mental illnesses and therapy and everything. But I went up to my mom and I was like, no. She's like, it didn't go well. And I was like, no, it was horrible. We didn't even talk about my issues. And my mom, sweet little mom, she was like, yeah, but it's like a block away from our house. Come on, just go to I was like, I can't do it, Mom. So I went one more time, you know, trial and error, which you have to do with therapy. And I went through 3 therapists before I found my therapist that I have now, and she's awesome. And you have to find who's right for you. I went to horse therapy once. That was just not for me. But
amazing for others.
Yeah, it's
whatever works for
it's
you.
just some people may love horses. I don't dislike horses. I felt weird to like talk about my problems as I was like petting a mane. I was like, yeah, you know, sometimes it's just a little too much for me. You're just like, there's just this big animal in front of you, and you're like, yeah, you know.
So they're not using your commercials for the equine therapy. They're not using the commercial.
But anyway, so that was just the reason for the story was just, you know, there's a lot of trial and error comes with it, and hopefully you'll get some funny stories out of it, like me. But so why should they go? As I stated, it's just, I mean, I just think everyone needs therapy. Everyone has, you know, issues in their life, and having someone who's unbiased in the situation is just a great way to go. Aren't therapists just for crazy people? Well, as we've talked about with stigma, you know, it's not really a thing. It's just, you know, honestly, I think if you're not crazy, then you go to a therapist. So, if you're crazy, you won't go to a therapist.
Oh, I see what you did.
It's crazy not to go to, you see what I'm doing anyways.
Yep.
So yeah, I said my whole spiel about why I use a therapist. And I mean, I have a very it's a very average life. It's not like I have anything that, you know, you would think would have a stigma to it. I'm a very normal, just, so yeah, again, trial and error to fit your child's needs. You know, there are a lot of different ways. I know some people are more comfortable in group therapy. I, for one, think that is the scariest idea in the world, talking about your feelings in a whole group of people. But yeah, so there are a lot of different types of therapies. And the last one, I think someone put on there just so I'd take notes.
Oh, I know, right?
So,
And we have phone numbers.
oh, and we have phone numbers.
Awesome, we do. And I think going back to that, when should you go question, a lot of times people think, oh, well, they're just, you know, somewhat depressed or they're just somewhat anxious. They feel like there has to be a crisis situation to make therapy, you know, oh, this is when we go. We are in crisis now. Where ideally, you know, using that barometer of, is the mental health challenge interfering with the daily life and the ability to live the daily life in the way that they want to live it, that's when you go. You don't wait until it's escalated, ideally, into a crisis situation. So heed those earlier, you know, if there are warning signs or conversations that come up, heed those and think of therapy as a proactive measure. And a lot of times people think, oh, I'm better now, so now I don't need to go. Or you want to treat it like a checkup. Doesn't mean you have to go every single week for the rest of your life, but you want to make it part of your yearly health checkups or monthly, you know, it can look a lot of different ways as far as how often people utilize a therapist.
Hannegan, did last spring individual talk about the concept of recurrence as being an indicator for?
Could you give that some context? Recurrence of
so
what?
recurrence meaning a repeat issue, something that doesn't go away. A stress is something. It's like when I think of stress, I think of something that kind of
over time that
it's
you
what you're in one. You know, it's like, okay, I have this test and now I don't have this test. I have this stress and now I don't have this stress. Versus something that's recurrent, that is you're seeing a theme as being
Like
Right.
situational
yeah, or
versus chronic.
yeah.
Yes, she
Situational.
did.
Yeah.
She touched on that as well. So things kind of that are logical stressors connected to this is a thing I could point to that's causing this stress versus ongoing general anxiety that's just sort of, it's not necessarily connected to a specific event. She did touch on that as one of the things to look for as well, because when there's something you can point to that causes, this is causing that stress and it's going to end and then this is going to feel different, that is more along the lines of typical stressors that we don't need to run and get mental health support for necessarily. So duration, over time, is another one of those signs as well. Questions? There are a couple of quotes here. Is that already there? Yeah. If you can't read that small, which I can if I'm sitting over there. This is a quote from Michelle Obama. At the root of this dilemma is the way we view mental health in this country. Whether an illness affects your heart, your leg, or your brain, it's still an illness and there should be no distinction. So again, that idea that mental health is essential health, just like any other physical aspect. And then this is from Kate Middleton, which I also like this one. A child's mental health is just as important as their physical health and deserves the same quality of support. No one would feel embarrassed about seeking help for a child if they broke their arm, and we really should be equally ready to support a child coping with emotional difficulties. And so that's our goal, is that we treat it all one and the same, and that you can talk about any of them at a cocktail party without fear of social repercussions.
What would you suggest to a parent that sees that the child needs the help, the child absolutely refuses to get the help?
That's a great question, because that happens, right? I don't need anything. I don't want to talk to anyone about my problems. I don't want to. I hear different versions of that all the time. And so you guys are probably the experts on this. What would you suggest to a peer or someone who was in that really heels dug in? I don't need help. I want to talk to people about this.
Before I said that if your kid is completely not okay with something, then don't do it, like putting them in an institution institution, which I use for example. But if it's something really serious, not saying that you should institutionalize them, but if there's something really serious, like they tried to commit suicide and you're trying to give them help, but they didn't want it, then I would say kind of make them find a good therapist and sort of make them go. I don't want to say that, but if it's so serious, if it's really serious, then I would say that they kind of need help even if they don't want it. But if it's something little, I don't really know. I'm not sure.
There's different, so let me just see if I'm hearing you right then. So the idea that if it's life-threatening, if someone's at risk of harming themselves or others, this is when we choose for other people, whether it's our offspring or our students. We choose for you because we care about keeping you safe, and safety is first. And so when it's that kind of danger situation, we choose for our kids. And then you work on it past that when they're in a place where they can then take the leadership on that process. Is that kind of where, okay, yeah?
Yeah, just going along with what we said earlier, just explaining to them there's nothing to be ashamed of, and there's nothing wrong with it. Like, obviously you have issues, but you shouldn't feel ashamed of those things, so that could be a step in the right direction.
I think just asking questions, as we've talked about, trying to get your child to open up to why they are so against seeking help and stuff is a good idea. I know when I first got therapy, I did not want to go. I was very nervous about it because I didn't want to be judged. And
Society tells us that that's...
And my mom just made me go anyways, and I just sat there the whole time and I was silent. She would ask me questions and I'd just say yes or no answers. But she ended up, helping a lot. So I think, there comes a time when you just have to push them. But I think asking questions is a big part of that.
Trying to understand the why in the first place. What are they worried about? Are they worried about social repercussions from their friends? Are they worried about sharing with trying to get to the why behind the emotional response to the idea of it?
Sorry, I have a lot of questions. I just do.
Wonderful.
Suggestions for LGBTQIA plus young people when maybe family isn't congruent, and we know as a culture that there's a lot of mental health associated with that. Suggestions you have to help them to get support and feel guided?
I guess I'll take this one. Again, I guess from the parents' point of view, just knowing that there's nothing, like, your child is your child, and if they say something, then that's what's true, and you listen to them about what they're saying, and you don't think that there's any other reason that they're saying this thing besides the fact that they are said thing. Like, if your child says something, just listen to them and believe them. And the child's point of view, if you have a family that's not accepting and you don't have any way to go to, say, like an LGBTQ plus therapist or anything, we do have a lot of LGBTQ people in our school that you can talk to, myself included, and these other people. So I guess just knowing who to talk to and who to reach out to, because there's really not much that a kid can do when their families aren't accepting, which sucks, but that's just the reality of it. So yeah, you just gotta find what you can.
If it's safe for you, because sometimes it isn't, I would say try and educate as best as you can, keeping your cool and not trying to yell, because sometimes yelling will do the opposite effect. Say if you're being very aggressive with someone that you're trying to educate, it usually does the opposite effect, where they associate that with the thing that you're trying to talk about. Sometimes that's not possible though. But if you are in a safe place and you are able to educate somebody, then I feel like that should be the first step with coming out. Also, coming out's a different thing, but yeah, I would just say educate and listen to any questions without trying to feel insulted or offended, which is hard to do sometimes. Just like giving them resources too, because I have a book and it's a really great resource. So I gave it to my mom to say, hey, read this book and maybe you'll understand better what I'm trying to explain to you. And so giving them resources, trying to tell them the best that you can